As we all know, Washington is an international state, and it is always with such great pleasure that we welcome the members of the Consular Corps to be present with us on this special day. Same request, please hold your applause until the end, if you would, please. And to the Consular Corps and all of you, extend grace if my pronunciation doesn't quite make it. From Canada, Craig Wackel. From the Federal Republic of Germany, Uli Fischer. From the Federative Republic of Brazil, Yara Silva. From Japan, Makoto Iori. From the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Leo van Dorp. From the Kingdom of Norway, Vego Forda. From the Principality of Monaco, Greg Lill. From Quebec, David Ruiz. From the Republic of Austria, Eva Kammel. From the Republic of Chile, Dr. Andres Barija. From the Republic of El Salvador, Marina Martinez. From the Republic of Finland, Christina. Every year. From the Republic of Finland, Christina Hiuka. From the Republic of Guatemala, Christy Andrino. From the Republic of India, Prakash Gupta. From the Republic of Ireland, Bernard Hensey. From the Republic of Korea, Mijo Park. Might I just add that today is the Korean American Day, because it is today the 123rd anniversary of the arrival of the first Koreans to the United States. From the Republic of Latvia, Iman Somquist. From the Republic of Lithuania, Raza Reichis. From the Republic of Peru, Alfonso Pasaldon. From the Republic of Poland, Teresa Indelak Davis. From the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office, Mei Lin. From the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Robert Twyman. And from the United Mexican States, Victor Ortega. Please give them all Sergeant at Arms Alexander.
Mr. President, His Excellency Governor Bob Ferguson has arrived.
Will the committee please escort Governor Ferguson to a place on the rostrum? Pray first, oath second. I will introduce you. The flags will be escorted to the rostrum by the Washington State Patrol Honor Guard, commanded by Sergeant William Rutherford, and comprised of Corporal Kyle Flagg, Trooper Dean Gallinger, Trooper Jared Raber, and Trooper Michael Sessions. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The national anthem will be performed by the Wapato High School Choir, directed by Aaron Nix. The prayer today will be offered by the Reverend Deanna Driver Gimmer, who is pastor of Hoggers Community Church, a Presbyterian congregation inside the Washington Corrections Center for Women.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to offer a blessing to you all today. As you heard from my introduction, I pastor a congregation of incarcerated individuals at Washington Corrections Center for Women in Gig Harbor. I asked some of the members of my congregation if they were given the chance, what they would pray for you. assembled leaders of our beautiful state. As these dearly beloved friends of mine work to heal and dream of brighter futures, they wrote prayers and blessings for you all that I hold within my heart and shaped what I want to offer today. To begin, I want to acknowledge the reality that we all are living with. Some days it is really hard to be human, especially a human who cares, who sees what is wrong and fights for what is right, who stubbornly refuses to give up on hope. You, our elected leaders, alongside your staff, are tasked with a great responsibility of caring for the land and the people of this state. You have it harder than many. So at the start of this new legislative session, I invite you to take a moment with me and breathe. If you'd like, place one hand on your heart and another on your belly, and close your eyes if it is helpful to block out distractions, and take several deep breaths. Feel your heart beating. Feel the air in your lungs. Let it fill up your belly. Feel your feet and your body grounding you and holding you. I invite you to breathe out any anger or fear or stress or division you may be holding, and to breathe in light and love and kindness and peace. And as you keep breathing, may you receive this blessing. God of the cosmos and God of our hearts, we thank you for all the good in our lives, for our loved ones who hold us, for our work which challenges us, for this planet that sustains us. We have been given so many good gifts, too many to name. Thank you. God of the planet and God of our beloved home of Washington State, I ask today that you bless each one gathered here. Bless their bodies with the strength needed to sustain long hours of work. May they get enough sleep and drink enough water. May they be nourished with good food and good conversation. May they remain healthy, free of colds and flus and other illnesses. May they stay connected to their bodies, noticing when tensions rise or fear creeps in, and finding creative and joyful ways to move and to rest. And when their days are extra long, may they be blessed with moments of laughter that make their bellies hurt. Bless their minds with deep knowledge when that's what is needed to stand firm in the strength of conviction, and with humility when that's what is needed to understand other sides and perspectives. May your wisdom guide their decisions, your wisdom which calls each of us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. May they be inspired to think creatively, to not stop at easy answers or fearful no's. As they make decisions for our common good, may they be rooted by integrity. May they remember that we are connected, that my flourishing is tied up with yours and yours and yours. And may this thought remain front of mind: how best can we care for the most marginalized and provide a bright future for our next generation? Bless their hearts with empathy, kindness, and courage. May each one here be grounded in justice and motivated by mercy. May they be willing to let their hearts break, and may those broken hearts spur compassionate action. May each heart be motivated not by concern for self, but by concern for others. May all our hearts hold on to a light of hope, no matter how dark it may feel. And Lord, we give you thanks for those not in this room, but without whom the work ahead could not be done. For those answering phones, sweeping floors, cooking lunches, guarding doors, and much more work that goes on behind the scenes, bless these workers. We are grateful for them. Finally, to close today's blessing, I want to offer you a Franciscan benediction. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and turn their pain to joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe you can make a difference in the world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done. In the name of Almighty God, Creator and Redeemer and Sustainer, Amen.
Just in case Reverend Driver Gimmer's name sounds a little familiar, you're all going to be hanging out with her sister a whole lot this session, the governor's legislative liaison, Debbie Driver. The president is now exceedingly pleased to welcome Washington State Poet Laureate Derek Sheffield, who has joined us today.
I'm here to share a poem with you, but first I want to thank Reverend Deanna for that poem of a blessing. It was gorgeous. Thank you so much. I've come to you today from my home in the Wenatchee Valley. Since beginning my term in May, I've traveled our state, visiting schools, universities, prisons, churches, senior centers, art centers, museums, art galleries, and land trusts. I am so grateful to be given the chance to make poetry part of today. In August of 2018, my daughters and I joined then Attorney General Bob Ferguson and his family, along with other friends, to hike a stretch of the Olympic coast. Being there those 3 days and 2 nights in communion with others was a deeply moving experience. Never again, I knew, would I be able to take for granted the fragility and specialness of that wild place. Here is the poem that resulted from the wonder. It is dedicated to our daughters, Katie Ferguson and Kelsey Sheffield. And let me just say, too, if you want to do the heart and the belly thing and close your eyes and breathe, please do it. I love that. What will keep us? Every pack-heavied step over sandhoppers and weed-slicked rocks, through driftwood scatters and the chill of tide waters, over wooded headlands as wildfires blaze north, south, east. Every step says, stay. I know mermaids aren't real, Kelsey says, but Daddy, look, holding a whip of bull kelp, whose light bulb face is a brown-green eye under ribbons of translucent hair. We trudge our miles, stepping over oscillating anemones in sunlit pools to pause at hole-in-the-wall and let their tentacles tongue our dipped fingers. And what's this holographic sheen? Not oil and not plastic we see, but a rainbow's iridescence, beaming from a plant. Over teeth of barnacled rocks poking from pools of sand crabs and sculpin, through foamy maroons, emeralds, violets, tangles of surf grass and lettuce cushioning our steps, we hike. Flies parting briefly for our ankles as we take in the gleaming curve of the otter's tail as she rises and dives into clear shallows, a pliable needle threading us and them, water, land, and rippled sky, where the numberless legs of sandpipers twiddle their skittery flocks, always just ahead. For even the reek slap of rot from a carcass too far gone for ravens or gulls, we hike. For our own place among the eaters and the eaten, pricking at us as we see how wide the jawbone, how long and curved the fangs. For the piping stutter of a crow-mobbed eagle landing on a shaggy bough. For the lightest touches of day mist on our skin and our headlamps in the night, lighting the tracks of slugs, silvering up every spruce trunk's loom. We hike for what will keep us if we keep it. On a bare stretch of sand ahead, a boulder splits into two bear cubs whose dark heads swivel our way before they turn as one toward the woods and lope out of sight, to go on in the multitudinous dream we need to be beyond our reach. Out past the breaking lines of waves we can just glimpse through binoculars, where the rounded humps of humpbacks slope one way and gray whales the other. 60-some otters floating on their backs have knit themselves into a living net. Weft, warp, leg, paw, kelp blades fixed by holdfasts to the deepest rocks. What is it they catch in their drift of sleep amid mists of rolling webs and stars? And what now as they ride day's swells in and out of sight in the rhythm of our own breathing? Our hike ends at the beginning of what the map calls Wedding Rocks, where people of the macaw long ago carved the round faces of sun and moon among fishers and fish, a whale, an orca. What feelings spilled through them as they knelt in these same unceasing sounds of waves, chip after chip falling away. We trace the grooves with our fingers, 5 centuries of wind, laced with the wet snorts and hunger cries of passing animals. Kelsey kneels over some new swirl of shell and exclaims. Katie says not a word, drawing with her stick something in the sand we can't yet see. Thank you.
Derek and Reverend Deanna, thank you for both poems and both prayers. It's arrived, and it is now my distinct privilege and pleasure and honor to introduce the 24th Governor of the state of Washington, Governor Bob Ferguson.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Mr. President, Madam Speaker, tribal leaders, distinguished guests, and my fellow Washingtonians. On this beautiful day, I'm excited to announce that under the new Ferguson administration, for the first time in state history, the Seattle Mariners and Seattle Seahawks won their divisions in the same year. That can't be a coincidence. And we know that our work in professional sports is not done until we bring the Seattle Supersonics back home. That we need to make happen. Now, great teams in sports and in politics are built on foundations of strong leadership. The first time I ever set foot in the governor's office was after I was elected Attorney General, and Governor Gregoire invited me to visit for a conversation. As the only other Washingtonian to serve as both Attorney General and Governor, she has been a mentor to me for a long time. Governor Gregoire, as you know, is with us today. Please join me one more time in welcoming her back to the Capitol. Last year, I attended the inauguration for the president at Heritage University in Toppenish, where we had the pleasure of listening to the Wapato High School Choir. You can see why I was inspired to ask them to perform today. Let's thank them one more time, and Director Aaron Nix for their beautiful rendition of the national anthem. And Pastor Gemmer, thank you so much for your words and your important work, and especially recognizing the many people behind the scenes, the workers who make all of our work possible. Please thank her for her service to the people of the state of Washington. And you heard from our poet laureate. I went to the University of Washington. It was a long time ago when I went there. And there was a group of college buddies who remain quite close. One of those college buddies was our poet laureate. So I'm not sure if my college friends are more surprised that Derek Sheffield became poet laureate or that I became governor. But it's a happy coincidence that we both have those positions at exactly the same time. Please give a round of applause for Derek Sheffield. And just to be clear, Derek was nominated for this position after a lengthy process before I became governor. Also here today, of course, is my wife, Colleen. Colleen comes from a family of hard workers. Her father, who died far too young, was a bricklayer and a leader in his union. As high school students, Colleen and her sister worked at a metals plant where their dad was employed. Colleen did a variety of jobs there, including learning how to use a jackhammer. Colleen was the first member of her family to graduate from college and earned her master's degree at the UW. Like many Washingtonians, she's a working mom who does a great job juggling multiple obligations. She's very passionate about her international education work with students in our state's outstanding community college system. And as you might imagine, my election as governor brings with it some rather significant changes for Colleen and our family. But Colleen handles those changes and guides our children with grace. Please join me in welcoming the First Lady of Washington State, Colleen Ferguson. Speaking of our twins, Jack and Katie are happy to play hooky from school today, and they will be heading off to college this fall. Katie will pursue her education in the Midwest, where she'll be playing collegiate fast-pitch softball. And using my prerogative as governor and proud softball dad, I note for the historical record that 2 days ago, Katie pitched her team to victory and went 2 for 3 at the plate. Jack is still deciding where he's going to college, but he already has exciting options, and I know he'll choose a school that fits his talents and his interests. Jack has, ever since he was a young boy, always had a deep interest in history. And as he worked the past few months on his many college applications, I was not surprised that Jack identified history as a likely major. So I've been thinking about history lately. Sometimes good history, sometimes challenging history. It seems to me that history works in different ways. And historic events for a state come in two forms: historical events that happen to us and the history that we create. Last month, history came to us in the form of historic flooding that caused tremendous damage and hardship to thousands of Washingtonians. After devastating flooding in 2007, then Governor Chris Gregoire said, quote, "I am reminded time and time again of the tremendous heart and spirit of Washingtonians." That heart and spirit, I've seen it firsthand. I saw it in Sumas and Concrete and many other towns where I had the privilege of meeting with Washingtonians and hearing their stories. I visited a bar and grill in Hamilton and had a conversation with the owner, Teresa, as she showed me around. The damage was devastating. Yet, Teresa remained optimistic, and she's determined to keep going after she strips the building down to the studs and rebuilds. I told Teresa that after she reopens, I'll stop by for a visit and a beverage or two. I hope you'll join me. I'll send you all an invitation so we can celebrate what Teresa and so many Washingtonians have overcome. I also met mayors and council members in those towns, like Skykomish Mayor Henry Sladek, who demonstrated true leadership even as they faced personal hardships from the flooding. And there are many images that left us all shaking our heads at the power of nature. One of the most jarring was certainly the video of an entire home literally being swept away by the Nooksack River. That home belonged to Mike Kasich and Sarah Hansen and symbolized the scope and devastation of this disaster. Mike said, "That place was our life savings. That place was everything." Mike and Sarah have a long road ahead of them, but they are deeply appreciative of the many Washingtonians they don't even know who reached out and offered to help. Mike and Sarah are here today, representing many Washingtonians who lost so much. Please join me in showing our support for them during this difficult period. Many Washingtonians found themselves in life-threatening situations. In the dark of night, at a home suddenly filling with water, or in a car trapped by freezing, fast-moving rivers. First responders, including our National Guard, risked their lives to help fellow Washingtonians. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers worked closely with our National Guard and others to protect our levees and the communities around them. The historic floods also dealt a devastating blow to our infrastructure. But our Washington State Department of Transportation crews answered the call. From Yakima to Enumclaw, state employees and our partners worked under challenging conditions and cleared 97 roads in just 4 weeks. One of those roads is Highway 2, a critical artery that connects our state. Thanks to the crews who labored 24 hours a day, Highway 2 is now open with no lane restrictions and just one detour. Joining us today are Transportation Secretary Julie Meredith, WashDOT Maintenance Superintendent Joe Munoz, Major Nathan Fry and Sergeant Wyatt Berg of the National Guard, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Seattle District Commander Colonel Catherine Sanborn, and Skykomish Mayor Henry Sladek. Please thank them and all of our state workers for their service during this very challenging time. I'm proud of the way we've come together to meet this historic moment. Local leaders and community members told me that their state government showed up. that they often did not even need to seek support because someone from the state was already reaching out and offering assistance. Government gets its share of criticism, but it's only fair to stop and notice when government delivers, especially under the most challenging and stressful circumstances. We were not passive observers of a historic event, quite the opposite. When the story of this historic flood is written, it will recognize that when history paid us an unexpected visit in December of 2025, the people and this state stepped up and faced the challenge head on. It's that heart and spirit of our people that allows me to report today that the state of our state remains strong. We have the 9th largest economy in the nation. We have a AAA bond rating. We dominate in space industry manufacturing. Washington is building the world's first commercial fusion power plant in Chelan County. The University of Washington, Fred Hutch, and the Allen Institute are part of a globally recognized ecosystem working on next-generation drug discovery and treatments. Several of you joined me for the launch of the Cascadia Sustainable Aviation Accelerator in Snohomish County last week, an opportunity for our state to once again set an example and set the pace for clean energy investment. We had the largest increase in the country in requests to form new businesses. Washington's business applications grew 16.2%, while nationwide applications dropped by nearly 5%. And guess what? People continue to move to Washington State. According to U-Haul rankings that just came out, Washington ranks 6th in the country for gaining one-way movers. In other words, our state continues to grow. And soon the world will be coming here for the biggest sporting event of all, the FIFA World Cup. These are just a few of the reasons why the state of our state is strong. But I am clear-eyed about the areas where we must do better. And my first proposed budget is laser-focused on those improvements. To keep our growth going, let's get back to basics. Invest in our infrastructure, make our tax system more fair, and continue our progress on addressing the housing crisis. In the next 2 months, let's create history to make the state of our state even stronger. Our transportation infrastructure is in dire need of investment. You know it, I know it, and trust me on this, the people of our state know it as well. We have 80 bridges in poor condition, which means, and I quote, advanced deficiencies such as section loss, deterioration, or seriously affected structural components. That's why I propose historic investments to take care of our bridges, more than $1 billion, without raising taxes. Our infrastructure challenges include roads as well. We rank first in the country for potholes, and that's not the kind of first we want. This matters to Washingtonians. The average cost for pothole-related repairs on a car is $400. My budget invests $164 million to pave hundreds of miles this summer. Over 10 years, I propose investing $756 million more to pave even more. And again, it does not raise taxes. These critical investments are good for jobs, good for our economy, and will keep Washington moving. In short, my proposal constitutes the largest investments in maintenance and preservation in over 2 decades. Let's make that history together. And there is one more piece of our core transportation infrastructure that needs investment: our iconic ferries. Thanks to the leadership of Steve Nevey, we returned to full domestic service for the first time since 2019. And it gets better. We went from 600 cancellations in the summer of 2024 to just 191 last summer. But Steve and I keep emphasizing that this significant progress is fragile because of an aging fleet. We have 11 vessels over 40 years old, including one that's 67. And yes, Jack and Katie, that ferry is even older than me. Just last week, we had 3 ferries go out of service unexpectedly. And you know what that means. reduce ferry schedules and hardships for Washingtonians who depend on that service. That's why I'm proposing an additional $1 billion to build 3 more ferries and continue our work to replace an aging fleet. Another challenge we face is the housing crisis. We did, you did, wonderful work on this issue last session. Let's build on that momentum, literally. My proposed budget, here's that word again, makes a historic investment, $244 million, the largest ever supplemental budget investment in housing. With those dollars, we will build and protect thousands of affordable housing units, make it easier for first-time home buyers to enter the market, and accelerate the process to build housing. We must continue to be bold and make historic investments in housing, both in policy and in dollars. So I'm confident we are well positioned to address internal challenges and meet the moment with unity and clarity. But we cannot ignore the external challenges that create division and cost to our state, our families, and our communities. We need to be direct about what is happening in our country and our state with ICE. It's horrific, it's unjust, and it needs to stop now. Pastor, I'm ad-libbing a bit, but I think in your remarks you mentioned anger at injustice as part of your remarks. I'm angry about this, and I think many of you are as well. As an American, I never thought I would see federal agents in masks jumping out of unmarked cars and grabbing people off our streets. This conduct will undoubtedly be remembered as a shameful period in our nation's history. Senator Valdez has a bill that prohibits law enforcement from wearing masks and requires identifying information to be clearly displayed on their uniform. Let's get that legislation to my desk immediately so I can sign that into law. Speaking of challenges with the federal government, the Centers for Disease Control has seen an exodus of scientific experts and alarming shifts in policy that place Washingtonians' health at risk. I immediately took action and teamed up with other governors to form the West Coast Health Alliance. The alliance ensures Washingtonians will continue to receive responsible recommendations from health experts who rely on, you guessed it, science. But we are not stopping there. I'm proud to partner with Insurance Commissioner Cooterer and a bipartisan group of legislators, Senator Cleveland, Representative Bronowski, and Senator Harris, to shift vaccine recommendations away from science-denying federal committees and place it with our own Washington State Department of Health, which will be guided by, you guessed it again, science. In addition to these challenges, we are facing an affordability crisis affecting Washingtonians across our state. Our regressive upside-down tax code does not help. Our system takes too much in taxes from hardworking families and not enough from the wealthy. Washington families whose income is in the bottom 20% pay a whopping 13.8% of their total income in taxes, while those whose income is in the top 1% pay only 4.1% of their income. That's not fair, that's not right, and that's why I'm calling for something truly historic, a millionaire's tax. And I want to be clear that when I use the term millionaire, I mean someone who makes more than $1 million in income in a single year. That does not include assets like the value of your home. Less than 0.5% of Washingtonians will pay it. Now let's talk about what happens to the revenue from this millionaire's tax. Bottom line, we must take a significant percentage of these dollars and put them back in the pockets of Washingtonians. Let me give you 2 examples. Some of those gains must be used to expand eligibility for and increase the amount of the Working Families Tax Credit. Under this program, the state sends a check each year to working families. That's a great start, thanks to you. But we can do even better. We must expand this program so that more people are eligible and increase it so Washingtonians get more money back in their pockets. Second, we must also use a significant portion of the revenue to lower taxes on small business owners. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. They create jobs and they build community. I want to let them keep more of their hard-earned money. They should not have to pay a B&O tax until they gross more than $1 million in revenue. For example, if you own a business and you gross $800,000 annually, you have a ton of expenses and currently pay about $4,000 in B&O tax. That small business owner should pay nothing. This approach creates the biggest tax break for small business owners in state history. We should also use the gains from millionaire's tax to put more money back into K-12 schools and bolster Washington students' access to a world-class education. So let's seize this opportunity, this session, to make our tax system more fair. And speaking of making life more affordable, my budget has specific ideas to help Washingtonians. A one-time $200 household utility bill credit for 125,000 families. $33 million to expand the state home energy assistance program, which provides utility bill assistance to thousands of households. And here's another historic milestone. Thanks to the generosity of the Ballmer Group, the state will receive upwards of $1 billion to invest in free early learning programs that help kids and hardworking families. I'm proud to partner with Senator Claire Wilson and Representative Steve Berquist on a bill that allows us to utilize this incredible gift to open up 10,000 additional spots for our kids. With these actions and others, we can make this short session long on affordability and make real differences for Washingtonians. Now, in my inaugural address last year, I highlighted specific proposals from both Democratic and Republican legislators that I thought should be passed by this body, and we had an excellent success rate. Half of those proposals became law. Those bills improved public safety, ensured farmers received the rebates promised under the Climate Commitment Act, prevented the National Guard and other states from being sent into Washington state without our permission, and helped protect children in crisis. Given that success, let's do it again right now. Senators Nobles and Wagner, Representatives Levitt and Penner, as the son and grandson of veterans, I support your effort to expand eligibility for free early learning programs to military families, and I look forward to working with you on that important issue. Representatives Mangeras and Peterson, thank you for House Bill 2151, which will create more affordable housing by making it easier for pre-made modular housing to meet building standards. I look forward to signing it into law. Senators Mazzal and Lovick, I share your interest in making our roads safer by expanding the definition of reckless driving. Let me know how I can help get that legislation to my desk for signature. Representatives Lowe and Reed are working together to allow the Traffic Safety Commission better access to health and medical information when reviewing fatal crashes. Uncovering the cause of these crashes helps with prevention and provides closure for Washingtonians who lost their loved ones. I look forward to signing that legislation into law as well. And Representatives Dent and Springer, I appreciate your bipartisan work on House Bill 2104, which ensures that local fire departments have access to air resources to fight wildland fires. I look forward to working with all of you over the next 60 days on these and other ideas to get good policy to the finish line. Last year, when I was speaking here, I said, our mission must be to speed up government and cut down permit and license processing times. If we are late delivering a permit or a license, that's a hardship for that Washingtonian. So I signed an executive order to improve our response times, and we're getting results. The Department of Health reduced processing time for behavioral health licenses from 4 months to 6 weeks. The Department of Licensing cut the processing time for security guards from 46 days to 30 days. They've also cut the processing time for cosmetologists from 40 days to 30 days, and we're just getting warmed up. My executive order requires agencies that don't meet deadlines to refund the application fee. That's fair, but we have a problem. Some agencies do not have the legal authority to provide those refunds. Thankfully, Representative Richards and Senator Krishnadasan have a bill for that. To put this refund policy into state law, let's make government more responsive to the people by supporting that proposal. One final issue and a friendly challenge to all of you. Washington is one of the most generous states, thanks to your leadership, in helping young people attend college and apprenticeships. Nearly half of Washington households qualify to receive this financial aid, and many are eligible to have full tuition covered at our public universities. But there's a catch. In order to unlock this assistance, that family must complete the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA form, which brings us to the challenge. We rank 47th for families completing the FAFSA. Improving our response rate is something all of us support. I recently signed an executive order establishing the Washington Completes FAFSA campaign. That order establishes an advisory board to guide our efforts in increasing completion rates. Teenagers get their information in ways that adults like us don't always understand. That's why our advisory group includes students to help us reach their peers. Sienna, Gerard, and Colin Bannister are two of those students, and they are here today. Sienna and Colin, please stand and be recognized for your efforts on behalf of many Washingtonians. To my colleagues in the legislature, here's my friendly challenge to you. Join me in this effort. My team will be following up with information about the program and ways you can help. For example, would you consider going to your high schools to promote this wonderful opportunity? Let me know, and I'll try to join you. Positioning Washington for an even greater and stronger future is why we all serve. Serving our constituents and doing this important work. It's why we take our roles seriously, debate and advocate for policies that we believe in. Let's give inspiration to future generations that we took up the challenge and provided a foundation for success. Washingtonians are not mere bystanders to history. We are bold, and with heart and spirit, we forge our destiny and make history. Thank you for joining me in serving the great people of the great state of Washington. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Governor Ferguson. Always an inspiration. Will the committee come forward and escort Governor Ferguson from the House chambers? Representatives Engel and Paulette, Senators Gaynor and Krishna Dawson. Will the committee come forward and escort the state elected officials from the House chamber? Representatives Schmidt and Wiley and Senators Christian and Slatter. Will the committee come forward and escort the state elected officials? We did that, didn't we? And they did a good job of it. Will the committee come forward and escort the Supreme Court justices from the House chamber? Representatives Intiman and Graham and Senators Wagner and Claire Wilson. The representative from the 34th Legislative District, Representative Fitzgibbon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the joint session now be dissolved.
Representative Fitzgibbon has moved, and it has been seconded, that the joint session now be dissolved. As many are in favor, will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The joint session is dissolved. It is now my privilege to return the gavel to Speaker Jenkins. It is always an honor.
Will the Sergeant-at-Arms of the House and the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Senate please come forward and escort President of the Senate Denny Heck, President Pro Tem Steve Conway, Senator Nobles, Senator Short, and members of the Washington State Senate from the House chamber. Tell me how I can help you too, Steve. The representative from the 34th District, Representative Fitzgibbon.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House now adjourn until 10:30 a.m. January 14th, the third legislative day.
It's been moved and seconded that the House adjourn until 10:30 a.m. January 14th. As many are as in favor, say aye. As many are as opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The House is now adjourned until 10:30 a.m. January 14th, the third legislative day.
hard to believe in the state of Washington there's a location where it rains 12 feet a year. I know that
chairs over there. Sorry. No, I got one. No, we're good. Oh, you do? Oh, never mind. Go ahead. Plus, nobody can show up on. Yeah, what are you guys doing? You guys screwed it up. You said your senator was the one that told us to come over. So. You're fine. All right. Second day session. Yeah, you put some Benny Hill music to that. It'll make a nice little.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of our 60-day session. I'm House Republican Leader Drew Stokesbury. I've got with me from the House, House Deputy Republican Leader Chris Corey. Also with me is Senator John Braun, the Senate Republican Leader, and I'll let him introduce the other senators. I will just make one or two brief prefatory remarks, which is to say exactly what Senator Wagner alluded to in his Republican response. I guess we will never know which Bob Ferguson we're getting any day of the week. His State of the State speech last year was surprisingly well received by a lot of folks in my caucus, a lot of folks out in my communities. As Senator Wagner pointed out, he had a lot of good lines talking about how the era of big government is over. Fast forward a year later, and he's singing a very different tune. It's the Bob Ferguson of old. I suppose last session it took him about 105 days to fall in line with the Speaker and Majority Leader. I guess this session it's taken him 2 days. But they are marching in lockstep on the idea of a state income tax and lots of other policies that I think will damage Washington. I think it was very telling that with regard to the income tax, only about half of the Democratic members stood up to clap for that. There was one or two other moments when Democrats stood up to clap. Other than that, it was a pretty muted speech and pretty muted reception by folks on both sides of the aisle, I felt like. Happy to talk more about the speech and about some of the other stuff coming up this session, but we'll turn it over right now to Senator John Braun.
All right. Well, thank you, Drew. Thanks for being here today. I'll introduce our Deputy Leader, Senator Drew McEwen, and our Whip, Senator Keith Wagner, is joining us. So you've heard me in the last several years talk about our priorities: affordability, public safety, education, and those are all super important as you talk to voters around, certainly around my district and around the state. But the gap between affordability and the others have just grown widely to the point that it's really affordability. That's what is top of mind by a long measure for folks around the state of Washington. And it's good to hear the governor mention affordability in his speech, but I would say he just fails to understand the nature of the problem. This isn't something we're going to fix with more government involvement, more taxes, and more regulation. We need less taxes, less regulation, and less government involvement if we're going to get out of people's way and allow our economy to flourish and let us get ahead of the affordability challenge we have in our state. So I see that we're headed into another 58 and a half days of fight over what it means for state government to clear the path for people to live prosperous lives here in the state of Washington. I think that's going to be centered on how we deal with the operating budget, whether we're able to live within our means, deliver essential services without putting additional tax burden on the people of the state of Washington, whether we're able to respect the will of the people on things like the income tax that has been rejected 10 times, 11 if you want to count the initiative of the legislature that we saw 2 years ago, and allow what we've been blessed to see over the last few decades, which is a prosperous, resilient economy in our state that's frankly suffering as a result of now 8 years of Democratic policies. I will stop right there, and I'm going to go directly to questions from everybody here, so we make sure we get through here. All your interest in a timely manner. All right, we count one. Go ahead.
Senator, last year, I think here was when you said, Governor Ferguson, if you want to reform government, which is I think what he said last year, here's your team. Can you tell the story of what happened since then, and do you feel like the governor has done enough outreach to Republicans? He did talk about some bills that he wants to see, that you want sponsored, but has he, I don't know, can you tell the story of that moment of kind of optimism maybe to where you are now?
Well, we're definitely not there now. And just use a few examples. He talked about, this grant program for law enforcement, which we did get a bill through, but it was just barely a bipartisan bill. And as cities and counties tried to make it work, they're realizing that it was really a nothing burger, and it's really not doing any of what we'd hoped it would do. We talk about even the change to the CCA to make sure farmers in the maritime industry got credit for the cost of the Climate Commitment Act. That's not really it passed, was signed into law, but the executive's not pushing it forward as intended. And of course, the big one is, how do we live within our means? He said over and over last year, and I repeated it over and over last year, that if he didn't want to be in the same situation when he came into session a year later. Well, here we are, back a year later, in exactly the same situation, because he either agreed or got boxed in. I couldn't tell you what's in his mind, but in the end, he signed by a long measure, the largest tax increase in our state's history, and thought that would solve a spending problem, and it didn't. All it did is further depress our economy to the point that we have lower revenues than expected at the end of session last year, and a significant deficit as we go into a supplemental year. Frankly, fewer tools to address it without cutting services to the people of the state of Washington.
I guess I'll double down on the point. I think it's really useful. The budget Governor Ferguson signed at the end of last session doesn't really match up with the budget priorities he said on the second day of session. Doesn't really even line up with some of the budget priorities he outlined sort of partway through session. Why he made that change, we can only guess. I think another illustrative example is to compare the bills that he talked about in his speech last year versus the ones this year. There was 3 or 4 Republican bills he brought up last year, which were, Republicans have been running for years and running into absolute brick walls trying to pass. Republicans were completely unable to get hearings for bills to hire more police officers, unable to get hearings for bills to fix the CCA for farmers, and suddenly Bob Ferguson comes and starts to talk about them. You fast forward, and Senator Braun's right, the versions that we finally got through the Democrat legislature, I think, weren't nearly the fixes as we would like, but at least something happened. You fast forward to this year, the bills he talked about, they're good ideas, but they're bills that we're probably going to pass whether the governor talked about them or not. They already have bipartisan co-sponsors. They're probably going to pass unanimously or nearly unanimously. That's not to detract from why we should do them, but that's a big pivot from him right there, to go from talking about bills that his Democrat co-partisans in the legislature refused to give hearings on to now talking about bills that will probably pass whether he weighs in or not. He certainly, when he took office last year, it looked like he wanted to be a Democrat, Dan Evans, that Washingtonians would remember for generations. And now he looks like a governor desperate to shore up his base before he's primaried in 2028.
One moment, a couple Republicans walked out on, and Democrats stood up and cheered the loudest at was when the governor talked about ICE agents and repudiated what's going on there with people. They're wearing masks, not driving unidentified vehicles, snatching people out, smashing windows. Recognize you're not driving the ship here, but do any of you, your caucus, have any concerns about what's going on there, especially if it arrives more directly in Washington State?
Well, I just comment that this administration has been very two-sided on this issue. They don't want to. They say on one hand we're not going to recognize or honor federal law, and then criticize sheriffs in Eastern Washington who choose to take a stance that is aligned with federal law. So which way do you want to have it, Governor? You can't have it both ways and say we're not going to enforce federal law or allow for federal law to be enforced, and then criticize actual law enforcement officers who are doing it. There are issues, and I understand people's frustrations and angers with what's going on the immigration front. It's a broken system. We're not going to fix it at the state legislature. It's a federal issue that needs to be resolved. And but in the meantime, when you talk to any law enforcement officer, regardless of what it is, whether it's ICE, if it's the FBI, the DEA, the best thing that happens is when you have coordination between various branches of law enforcement. When you don't have coordination, you have chaos. And you'll hear that from any officer in any given department in any jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I think it also remains to be said, I mean, people should stop jumping to conclusions, right? We have politicians and others going out in the media and declaring guilty or innocent verdicts before all the facts are out, before there's been any sort of investigation, trial, jury, or their peers. Like, we should stay out of it, right? As legislators, governor, whatever, we should step back and let the work be done. As far as the masks go, I guess my question is, how do my law enforcement officers, my state law enforcement officers feel? Because we came out of a couple very contentious years where they were the targets of a lot of vicious attacks by the Democrat-led legislature, where they were made to be the enemy of the people rather than the protectors of the people. And so here we are back again doing this. One thing, again, trying not to get too into the federal stuff, but we're seeing huge increases of assaults, vehicular assaults, and other attacks on federal law enforcement officers. And then to have either state, county, whoever, leaders basically encouraging that kind of behavior is what's also, I think, contributing to the increased attacks, the incidents, and probably a large reason why a lot of these federal officers are wearing masks, because they have been, either called out directly or indirectly for attacks, both personal and professional.
On the billionaire's tax, do you think there's enough support in that room for that? The governor said it needs to be a constitutional amendment, which would require more. Or is that a done deal? It sounds like the folks on the Democratic side are already working on the logistics of that bill that is going to move forward.
First of all, I'd ask the media to refer to it as an income tax, which is what it is. They're just setting an arbitrary threshold to make it sound better to the public. And if there's anybody in this state that doesn't think that that's going to trickle on down to them and be a broad-based income tax, I would just look at the speech last year that the governor made, and when every tax bill was put before him, he signed them. This current administration and legislature have an unquenchable thirst for more taxes. They might start there, but don't have any illusions that's where it's going to end, and it's an income tax.
So I was the co-chair of the tax structure work group where we studied this for over 2 years. And one thing we did not come back to the legislature with was a recommendation for an income tax. Nobody had the stomach for that. So all of a sudden, you've got this big bill coming up due to mismanagement, and they're going to jump to that? The people have been against it. The tax structure work group didn't even recommend it. And that was a bipartisan work group.
I'll point out the obvious. You ask about a constitutional amendment. They do not have votes for a constitutional amendment. I can tell you that for sure, because there's not a Republican in the legislature that will vote for that. People have been clear on their distaste for income tax, and then beyond that, I've heard the Senate Majority Leader has been pretty pro on this. I heard a more measured approach from the Speaker, and then I think that we're uniform that we oppose it. But even for the folks on the other side of the aisle that may support it, to try to do something as complicated as this in a 60-day session where we're now in the first week and nobody up here or in this room, I believe, has seen the bill yet, this is a pretty big deal to just trot out after 100 years of saying it's unconstitutional, the people don't like it, 11 times and counting, and we're going to run it through over the top of the people in a short 60-day session. That just seems like a stretch to me. But what I can say for sure is Republicans will oppose it because we know, as Senator McEwen said, that this may start at higher income levels. But there's no question it ultimately bleeds, gets trickled down to every single person in the state of Washington. And while they promise, finger promise maybe pie crust promise, I'm not sure what the type of promise is, that we're going to do some other tax reduction in the future once this becomes a fact. I've sat in several forums in the last couple of weeks with my counterparts on the other side, and people would ask questions about, are you going to fund this, or are you going to fund that? All good programs, generally bipartisan programs, and they said time after time, well, we really wish we could, but we just can't afford to do it. So I could fast forward on that and see, hey, we'd really wish we could reduce the sales tax. We really wish we could reduce the property tax. We really wish we could reduce the gas tax, but we just can't afford it now. That's exactly how this ends if they push forward on this.
They always use the phrase that we have a regressive tax policy in this state to justify any new taxes. But I challenge you, what tax break did they give to the working class in this state? Zero. They always hang that out there, that, we're so regressive. But there's never a property tax break, there's never a sales tax break. The things that the working class are paying the most of, proportionate to their income, there's never a break for them. And we've had proposals time and again. I had a sales tax holiday for school supplies. Couldn't afford it. had a property tax property tax freeze for seniors that are losing their homes. Told couldn't afford it. Guess what? The seniors can't afford their homes. I proposed the P&O tax, ironically, about 10 years ago, of that $1 million threshold the governor mentioned today. Was told by members that are still here, we can't afford it. They will never give you tax relief, only more taxes.
The governor, what he's trying to do, if he gets that, it's just wealth redistribution. He's going to take it from over here and give it to somebody else if they actually got to that point. You may feel how you like about wealth redistribution, but that sounds like socialism or borderline communism to me, to take somebody's wealth and give it to somebody else.
I will echo what Senator Braun said about the Republican caucus. House Republicans are united against an income tax on anyone because we know that eventually an income tax on anyone will turn into an income tax on everyone. We've seen this happen time and time again from Democrat-controlled legislature. The document recording fee was initially $5. It's now $300. It's been raised numerous times. The capital gains tax has only been in existence a few years and already has a new surcharge on top of the initial tax that was passed. The death tax went from being a new idea to Washington now has the highest death tax of any state in the country. Time and time again, you see this. It's not just with tax things. We saw it 6 months ago. There was a CNN article that said Democrats were considering mid-cycle redistricting in other blue states to sort of get back at Texas and some of the national things. Joe Fitzgibbon said that mid-cycle redistricting is not on the table for us. 6 months later, he's the prime sponsor of a bill to put mid-cycle redistricting right back on the table. Jamie Peterson brought to the floor an initiative to the legislature 2 years ago that prohibited an income tax. 2 years later, he's now one of the most vocal proponents of an income tax and said that 2 years ago he was only making a pie crust promise. So I have no idea why the public would ever trust Democrats. Even Democrats admit they can't be trusted. Larry Springer said at a Bellevue Chamber Forum last week that the public should not trust Democrats, that this tax will only ever apply to millionaires. So I think that the record is very clear that a tax on millionaires today will be a tax on you and me and my constituents tomorrow. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that, Representative Stokesbury nailed it, is that the only real tax relief that's been anywhere introduced in the last, 9 years that I've been here was the Working Families Tax Credit, and it was only because the Republicans continually pushed to fund it. And we were very clear from the beginning, this is not how we would do tax relief, but it was the only option in law. Democrats passed it and then never funded it. And it wasn't until Representative Stokesbury and others stood up and said, we need to do this now. There's got to be better ways to get money back in people's pockets, and the ideal way is to not take it from the beginning. That's sales tax deduction, B&O tax deduction, property tax relief. That's the real way you boost working people's wages.
And their argument that they're going to reduce other taxes too, rings hollow, as Senator McEwen pointed out. When have they actually reduced taxes? But we can go one step further. Not only have they not reduced regressive taxes, they're actively raising regressive taxes. Last session, they doubled the Discover Pass fee and they doubled hunting and fishing license fees. They started session saying they wanted to tax millionaires and big business, and ended session taxing regular Washingtonians who just want to enjoy the public outdoors. The carbon tax is the state's most regressive tax. It falls disproportionately on lower income folks who live outside the job centers that have to depend on a car to commute to their job. So Democrats aren't just refusing to roll back regressive taxes like the sales tax. They're actively adding new regressive taxes like doubling Discover Pass fees and raising Climate Commitment Act taxes.
During this morning's Democratic media avail, there was a lot of discussion of DCYF and suspicion of fraud. Leadership said that they haven't seen any evidence of that, and that they suggested that DCYF and the state auditor are fully capable of finding. If it's there, they're going to find it. Are you hearing any support across the aisle from Democrats who say they would support Rapporteur's bill or any other piece of legislation that might have a little bit more teeth and oversight and into DCYF, or is there discussion of ways to go about that?
I think DCYF has a whole host of problems that need to be addressed. And frankly, that's probably a bigger conversation than just the fraud. But speaking to that, I believe that there were several audits that were actually brought to light and pointed out that they were failing their audit findings and nothing was changing. So I can't speak to which of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to look into that, but it would be rushed to automatically come out and say there's been no evidence of fraud. And we should go in and look at it and do a objective, third-party audit, figure out what's wrong, and if there are places of waste, fraud, and abuse, let's fix it. One of the things that I think would help my colleagues on the other side of the aisle is the ability to actually put money where it's going to help people. And if they're going to have a robust social safety net, I would imagine they would also want to make sure that it wasn't being wasteful or abused or stolen too, because then that just hurts the people that they're trying to help.
Yeah, I was going to make that exact point. I think there is some support on the other side of the aisle because folks want to make sure that we're not wasting tax dollars. If it's going to fraudulent purposes, that should be rooted out, and we should spend that money in more effective things. And I know there's a lot of Democrats that believe in that. At the pre-session media forum on Friday, the one formerly known as the AP Forum, Speaker Jenkins got sort of upset that me and Senator Braun sort of said we should, among other things, investigate this and figure it out, and she made some comment that it was offensive to the honest child care providers to suggest that fraud might exist, which I think was a very surprising reaction. I'm an attorney. We have a pretty robust set of ethics rules, and if an attorney is found to have violated that, they're punished by other attorneys. Attorneys want to make sure other attorneys aren't breaking the law because it gives the rest of us a bad name. Same thing happens with police officers. You talk to any cop, what should we do about a dirty cop, a corrupt cop? They want that guy thrown off the force. People don't want their professional colleagues to be doing bad things that give their entire profession a bad name. I see no reason why honest child care providers wouldn't also agree that fraudulent child care providers should be rooted out and stop receiving taxpayer subsidies.
And how about the fact, wouldn't a law-abiding child care center be offended and upset that there's fraud going on to illegitimate ones if there is fraud going on? It's absurd. I think that the Senate Democrat knee-jerk reaction was actually to introduce a bill that narrows the Public Records Act to make it harder for you folks to do your job because they're trying. Their reaction on this whole issue was, let's make it tougher to look at things and not worry about any possibility. Look, I've not seen anything, but why would we be afraid to look? And former Auditor Brian Sontag even suggested that these are things that you do need to look at.
And you should be clear, the concerns about child care, some of it has come from news reporting, both in other states and here, but the baseline reports that drive this concern come from folks inside state government, from whistleblowers inside state government. This has been happening for some time. So this isn't some crazy conspiracy that's suggesting there might be wrongdoing. There's credible allegations that there's something going on wrong. Whether they're true or not, I don't think anybody in this room knows. But whether they're true or not, they deserve investigation. They deserve investigation because if there is fraud, if there is criminal activity, there should be consequences. Because that's taxpayer money being misused, possibly criminally. If there's nothing going on, the people of the state of Washington deserve to know that. Look, if you go out and talk to regular people, including other child care providers today, there is deep frustration. You could even say anger at the way, the sort of indifference to potential waste, potential fraud, potential misuse of government money. People get up every day, they go to work, they support their families, they support their community, they pay their taxes, they do what we think the right thing is, and then they look the fool because they're not the ones that break the rules or might be breaking the rules. Absolutely this deserves investigation because the people of the state of Washington deserve to know what's happening one way or the other, and we need them to trust us to run state government. And if we don't do that, if we don't investigate, if we don't look into it, they will never trust us.
To the budget, there was a lot of talk about the millionaire's tax, income tax, however you want to describe it, but even if that passes, that's not going to have any effect on the current biennium, the current budget deficit. Is there any agreement between Republicans and Democrats on how to balance the budget going into this session?
No.
I think there's a little agreement between, there's a small handful of moderate Democrats who agree with Republicans that further taxes will derail the state's economy, that raiding the rainy day fund as the first move you do to balance the budget is a really bad idea, and that repealing the 4-year balanced budget requirement or suspending it is a really, really foolish and foolhardy idea. So there's a little bit of agreement with moderate Democrats, whether there's enough of them, we'll see. We got 58.5 days left to figure that out.
Yeah, and just one more thing I want to add. 4 years ago, they raided the Rainy Day Fund under the auspices of COVID, never actually spent the money, moved it to a different account, and then spent it on ongoing things. So part of the reason why we're in such trouble we're in now is because they raided it once before. So this notion that we're going to solve it again by doing it is pretty insane in my opinion.
It's pretty clear that it's going to be, for the most part, if not all, cuts in order to balance the budget. So where would Republicans like to see state government cut? I know that's kind of kid in candy store for Republicans.
I characterize it as savings, not cuts. I mean, you have to, and there's no magic solution. You got to get inside the budget and find where services, growth in the cost of services over time is outpacing inflation, outpacing revenue growth, and we know that's true. The three critical things that the state does is educate, medicate, and incarcerate. In each of those areas, the caseload is lower today than it was before. Caseload is going down, and yet expenses are going up. That tells us we're getting it wrong. It could be any number of things. It could be we're mismanaging the money. It could be the Democratic majority pinch it for adding bells and whistles, that we're getting away from the core priorities of government. There's a whole bunch of things you can do to manage that growth over time that they've frankly been unwilling to do. A couple things, at least one I would point out is we've had an enormous growth in middle management in state government over the last 10 years. Enormous. I mean, as particularly, we talked earlier about DCYF. If you look at the growth in frontline workers versus the growth in middle management, it's night and day. And if you're interested, we could certainly send you the graph. But it looks like this for middle management. It's virtually flat for frontline workers, where I think many of us would agree they need more folks and they don't need more middle management. There's places like that all throughout state government where we could do a better job of spending taxpayers' money. The one place, I said no earlier, there is one place, at least from the governor's budget, where we agree. Republicans pushed last year that use of Climate Commitment Act money for the working families tax credit was a good idea. It was allowed by law. In fact, it was the top thing on the list of the way that money could be used. The governor, of course, proposes using some of that to pay for that exact thing. And I think in that one area, we are in agreement. That's a place where we can use existing funds, no new taxes, to actually help the folks that are most impacted by the Climate Commitment Act. It's a very regressive program, and that gives us a way with those funds to help the very people it hurts the most.
So going back to the comments Rep. Corey made about the budget stabilization account, the rainy day fund, a recent Pew study shows us second worst funded in the nation. That's pretty disappointing, but when you look back on history, we know exactly why. We're in sad shape for that budget stabilization account. Poor management.
I'll also point out, too, the governor mentioned briefly that the state has a AAA bond rating. That is in part because of our rainy day fund and the procedures we have around that. The more we chip away at the rainy day fund and start using it to backfill budget holes, the smaller our ending fund balance is, the more we risk losing that. We also enjoy that in part because of our lack of an income tax, and I think imposing an income tax would threaten our AAA bond rating. We have much more stable finances as a state without an income tax. So he wanted to take a little bit of credit for that, but a couple of his proposals would actually imperil that continued rating.
The governor today discussed his plan to invest in the state's infrastructure and also to build more housing in the coming years. Are those areas that you can think that you can find commonality or support in your congressmates?
So two areas he talked about, one, some in transportation, some in affordable housing. Similar but different in a couple ways. Transportation, I think we have a long history of Republicans working in a bipartisan way to try to build a world-class transportation system. Sadly, we're not getting there right now. If there's one thing that's probably in worse shape than the operating budget in Washington State, it's the transportation budget. And we've said this for many years, we're going to have to rethink how we fund that. That we're long-term, we need to move more of the operating revenues to transportation to have a long-term stable source. That's what many states do. And we did a little bit last year, and we need to do more of that if we're going to get after these big projects. The governor properly highlights they need attention. Not only that, we need a lot of attention on maintenance and transportation, but we need a stable revenue source. And there's just no path with a cap and trade system that adds 60 to 70 cents a gallon, already the third highest gas tax in the country. Gas tax not going to do the job. Last year in the 2 years before that, they passed a bunch of individual fees to try to fund transportation. But the reality is there's just not that money where there. So the issue isn't a commonality on the need to invest there. It's how we get to funding. On affordable housing, it shocks me that here we are many years into a housing crisis, and the grand revelation by the governor today is we're going to do more of the same. We're going to solve this problem by more investment in affordable housing, when it just doesn't get there. You can't solve our housing problem. It mathematically doesn't work unless you involve the private sector. And the Democratic majority keeps kind of nibbling at the sides when it comes to the energy code issues, the regulatory issues, the Growth Management Act issues. They're stopping investment in housing and pretend we're going to solve it with new funding for affordable housing. And don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with affordable housing. It just doesn't solve the problem. So that I was a little shocked. The big revelation, we're going to do some more of the same that's absolutely failing us and hope we solve the problem. I think we're going to be disappointed.
In Ways and Means testimony, as I understand it yesterday, the governor's staff was asked how many homes that would build in this biennium, and the answer was 0. So it's a great headline, but look at what the result is. It's 0 in this biennium. And I'd also point out, because we're always asking, well, what solutions do you guys have? And myself and others over the last 10 years have proposed on the transportation side to take sales tax generated from car and truck sales and have that fund transportation upkeep. And you do that over the course of 10 years, and you wean the operating budget off of that revenue. So through economic growth, you allow the operating budget to absorb that loss. Guess what? If we had done that 10 years ago, we'd have a couple $2 billion going in every year for upkeep of our transportation system. So we've had solutions. But again, the majority party in this administration seem to want to double down on the failed policies of the past.
I'll add on housing. I mean, I think the silver lining, the prospect for hope, is that there is some agreement on the idea that the real way to solve the problem is through building more supply. So the questions are we going to get distracted along the way by spending a lot of state money on publicly built housing, which Senator Brown alluded to, just it will take decades, if not centuries, to actually solve the problem that way. So will there be a political will on the other side of the aisle to go after some of the Democrats' sacred cows? I think the big ones are permitting reform, Growth Management Act, energy code. All three of those you run up into some version of local government opposition or environmentalist opposition. But the only way we can actually start to build the more supply that we need is you figure out a better way to make GMA work in the 21st century. You figure out a better energy code so that building costs aren't insane, and you figure out a better permitting system so that it doesn't take 2 years to build a single house.
Going back to the Climate Commitment Act funds, obviously the governor has proposed using those to shore up the work commitments tax credit. Do you guys agree with that move? And secondarily, that's triggered a lot of other proposals and ways that the government can tap those funds in this time of need. What other priorities or what other ways would you use Climate Commitment Act funds going into this session?
So, yeah, I said earlier, I agree with that. That was a Republican idea from last year. We think it's a viable way to use that money. And I want to be clear, we're raising considerable money, or almost $2 billion a year in Climate Commitment Act revenue. If you look at the way that's being spent right now, there's a small portion that's going to transportation, but most of it's being spent on special interest, nominally to reduce carbon. But when you look at the numbers out of OFM and ecology and commerce, they're all tracking them different ways. They're either, in one case recently it was wildly inflated, but they're all relatively small numbers of actual carbon prevented at an enormous cost, where you could go and buy carbon reduction on the market for a much lower price. So it's not like we're foregoing some magic reduction in carbon if we don't do other things with that money. And I would say three things. One, working families tax credit is a good investment. I have believed all along that is essentially a gas tax, that if we're going to collect that money, and the people of the state of Washington said we want to keep doing that, we ought to invest a much larger portion of it in our transportation system. And then finally, how about we invest it in forest fire response and prevention, where we have a much, much higher possibility of reducing the emission of enormous amounts of carbon. Largest carbon emitter in our state is forest fires. Why don't we take some of that money to cover the cost of forest fire prevention and forest fire fighting?
House Republicans agree. And I think there's a bill coming from Andrew Barkus that would propose a related idea, using the money for transportation purposes. I think connected to some of the floods we had, and we've got a lot of roads and infrastructure to repair. But bottom line is, Republicans feel like it's an extremely regressive tax that we think doesn't do much good. If it's on the books, we should definitely use that revenue for better good than it's being used for now. And there's a few ways to do it, including how the governor proposed. A couple other ways you could do it too.
All right. Looks like we ran out of questions. Well, welcome to session 2026. Thanks for being here. We look forward to working with you over the next 58 days.
Thank you.
Thanks.